Well, Israel is heavily engaged. They closed the northern civilian airspace over the weekend amid this tension. And, of course, they've taken their stance over the weekend by, again, launching rockets into Syria. The United States sitting on the sideline. Let's ask Abe Katsman what he thinks of this. He's on the ground in Jerusalem. He's an American attorney and political commentator living in Israel, and he serves as counsel to Republicans abroad Israel. He's also a columnist for the American Thinker. Abe, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Andrea.
So, Abe, tell us what happened in Syria over the weekend.
Well, as best anyone can tell, because, of course, Israel has not officially confirmed any of this, there were attacks launched on what are believed to be fairly advanced missiles that were being shipped through Syria by Iran to Hezbollah. These are missiles known as the Fatah 110 and the Scud-D missiles. Those missiles both can carry serious payloads and can cover pretty much all of Israel. So Israel has said all along that they wouldn't allow weapons that would be game changers into the mix, and that is believed to be why they acted here.
And there's confirmation that those weapons came from Iran?
Again, nothing is officially verified. Israel has a very deliberate policy of neither confirming nor denying these things, but that seems to be the unofficial explanation.
And if you had to break this down, Abe Katsman, as far as what the fighting is now, is it Assad with Iran and sort of this axis of evil versus the rebels, which is now teamed up with al-Qaeda? And in your estimation, if Assad is toppled, let's say, now he's certainly fighting back and he has allies in other countries, if he's toppled, who then fills that vacuum? Because there's no good guys in this fight. I mean, that's what we've been trying to convey. But if he goes, who steps into power? Is it al-Qaeda who fills that vacuum? Is it Hezbollah? Does Hezbollah fight al-Qaeda? What are we looking at if we don't see this fighting continuing?
Well, it's an excellent question, and I don't know if anybody knows the answer. The big problem is that there might have been a window some time ago when the U.S. and the other Western countries might have been able to find moderate elements among the rebels in Syria to support, but they didn't. Meanwhile, what you called the axis of evil did get into the game, and they've been arming the Islamists, the Salafists. There are some very radical groups that seem to have the upper hand in terms of the makeup of the rebels. Now, it's not like Assad himself has a collection of good guys around him either. I mean, this is somebody whose allies are Russia, Iran, Iraq, Hezbollah, and really on the other side, even if we do end up supporting more moderate elements, if we can find them, it looks like it'll be kind of tentative support by the U.S. or the European Union or the UN. I wouldn't bet heavily on the success of whatever moderate elements may be left.
So, do you think the Obama administration has made this situation worse, Abe, by not acting?
I have to believe that the answer to that is yes. It's difficult to say definitively, but when you look at certain other developments, for instance, it was revealed last week, a number of sources revealed that the U.S. has basically lost track of much of Syria's stockpile of sarin and mustard gas. Apparently, they've been moving the stockpiles onto trucks. They've been moving the trucks around the country. Apparently, Assad is training irregular militias in using these weapons. We don't know where they're going to end up. Even if the U.S. now would decide to send in troops to secure the stockpiles, I don't even know how successful it might be.
Abe, that is so scary. That is so frightening. Perhaps the most frightening piece of news out there today.
It really is. And let's be clear, that Yes, if a terror group gets a hold of chemical weapons, it's a problem for Israel, but it's not only a problem for Israel. The U.S. is vulnerable. Europe is vulnerable. There are jihadists from Europe that are fighting in Syria. Look, we just saw in Boston what can happen, and I don't even want to think of what it would mean if they got a hold of a chemical weapon.
Oh, my gosh, it's very scary. Abe, hang on a minute. I'm going to hold you over to the next block. We're going to take a quick break, but there's so much breaking, and this is such big news, especially because of what you just mentioned, that we're losing track of these chemical weapons, the chemical weapons that were supposed to be the infamous red line by this administration that now does not want to deal with it. They really did miss the window. Abe Katsman, stay with us. But first...
The Andrea Tantaros Show.
I think it's deteriorating by the day. So you have Hezbollah is now moving troops, Hezbollah troops, financed by Iran, across Syria. They're engaged in the fight to protect the Assad regime. You have the al-Nusra Front, which is an al-Qaeda front organization, in the thousands showing up. And they're arguing now that if this continues, you could have in excess of 10,000 foreign fighters pouring into the country across the course of a year. You have Hamas elements there. Everybody wants to get their hands on chemical and more sophisticated conventional weapons. Refugees destabilizing the entire region. This is as bad a situation as I have seen in a long time.
That was Mike Rogers over the weekend talking about the Syria civil war between Assad and the rebels that have now teamed up with al-Qaeda. No good guys in this fight, folks. And the Israelis having to take matters into their own hands, firing rockets in Damascus. Of course, the Minister of Information in Syria came out and said there will be dangerous consequences to the Israelis for creating such violence. I mean, they're not really one to talk. And they condemned what Israel did. Of course, you can remember that President Obama, a couple years ago, he participated in a coalition of forces against Libya because of Muammar Gaddafi's forces. Remember that infamous Samantha Power that was on his staff? And she said that we have a responsibility to protect. She was no longer in the Obama administration, and shortly thereafter due to a controversy. But now you have the White House changing its tune, saying, well, listen, if Assad drops sarin gas on his own people, what the heck does that have to do with us? Well, maybe you could believe the president that he really doesn't want to lead from behind at all. He doesn't want to lead. He doesn't want to get in the line at all. However, we've led before from behind. We've gotten involved. Plus, the president said that the chemical weapon was the red line last August. Now, crickets from the White House. Abe Katsman's on the ground in Jerusalem. He writes for The American Thinker, The Daily Beast, and AbeKatsman.com. Abe, thanks for staying with us. So can you give me a best case and worst case scenario right now in Syria?
Oh, boy. Well, I suppose a best case is that the worries about how decentralized the chemical weapons have gotten, that those rumors are overblown, although apparently there are a number of sources within the U.S. military that have backed those up. Eli Lake reported on this last week in the Daily Beast, apparently, like I said, with multiple sources. I hope that that what we're hearing out of Syria, and in fact even out of the rebels in terms of retaliation against Israel, is just bluster to save face. That's quite possible, and it may be. I think people in Israel take some comfort in the fact that Prime Minister Netanyahu has gone ahead with a trip to China. He's actually out of the country, and I think that if we were really on the brink of war, that he probably would have put that trip off for a little while. Mm-hmm. So it might not be as dire at the moment as some of this sounds like, but it's worrisome. And I think in Israel, Israel keeps on looking at the rest of the world doing next to nothing. I think there's a feeling here increasingly that Israel is sort of like Gary Cooper in High Noon. Nobody else is stepping up, and it seems to be left to Israel to do whatever has to be done. But in answer to the question that the person from the Obama administration asked about what that has to do with us, mm-hmm. that is such a worrying question, not just because of the callousness of it, but because it shows a certain tunnel vision. The U.S., when the U.S. puts its own credibility on the line, we think in America, we think that this is in particular about Syria, about what the U.S. is going to do in Syria. In Iran and in the rest of the jihadist world, they think it's about America, and they think it's about Israel, because they're watching to see how the U.S. and how Israel react. Mm-hmm. And if the U.S. does not do very much in the face of violations of the exact terms that President Obama set forth, they pick up the signal very clearly.
And do you think that's the signal that the rest of the world is seeing, that Obama administration came out, it said it would get involved with this red line of chemical weapons? Now there's proof of chemical weapons, and the Obama administration saying, oh, well, who cares? That's not really our problem. How do the Israelis feel about that, Abe Katsman?
I hope that America ultimately, when push comes to shove, will be there and will act if necessary. I know that President Obama seems to be very reluctant to get involved, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I'm not advocating jumping into into the fray in every battle going on in the world. But this is going a little bit far, and like I said, once you've already set forth the terms under which you're going to get involved, and then you don't follow through, that's dangerous.
But isn't it, too? I mean, this administration's policy in the Middle East has been all over the map. It's pretty confusing. I mean, as I pointed out, we'll get involved sometimes in Libya when it came to Gaddafi. Now we're not getting involved. And really, isn't the truth, Abe Katsman, the window to get involved was over a year ago. That was when the United States should have gotten involved. Now it's so out of hand. And look, I get it. John McCain, I don't know what he's calling for, boots on the ground. I would not support that. I think that, the president should not be the first one in leading at this point. But what he's done, because he has no real doctrine. There's no Obama doctrine. There's no cogent message when it comes to who our allies are and when we'll get involved and when we won't. And what's upsetting to me is when he says he will get involved, when a red line is involved, he doesn't. And that to me says that any other time he says that there's a red line, whether that be with Syria or whether that be with Iran, they just laugh it off like they do with everything else and say we can't take this guy or this country, meaning the United States of America, seriously. I mean, am I missing something?
No, I think that's exactly right. I wish there were a doctrine. There doesn't seem to be one. There's no Obama doctrine. There's no Clinton doctrine. There's I don't know that there's a Kerry doctrine or a Brennan doctrine, but I don't see much evidence of anything coherent here, and that is the most worrisome thing of all.
Well, I hope that they do not retaliate on Israel. To your point, it seems like Syria has its hands full right now fighting al-Qaeda, fighting the rebels, and they're probably thinking, oh, my gosh, are we really going to go at it with Israel right now? And that would be an area, Abe Katsman, where I think that President Obama could not sit on his cans if they retaliated, especially not to Israel. And, of course, we know Israel's just trying to protect itself yet again, acting alone, of course. Abe Katsman, always great to have you on the show, reporting on the ground in Jerusalem. If you love what Abe Katsman has to say, you can get more of him on the Daily Beast, The American Thinker, and his own website, abekatsman.com, abekatsman.com. Thank you so much, Abe. We appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thanks.
Coming up next, Daniel Pipes, the president of the Middle East Forum. You won't believe the latest on Benghazi, plus the